Steven. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Scott? Thank you for having me
Awesome.
on.
Yeah, thank you for coming. This is so exciting. And you are Steven from the fragrance channel Redolessence, right?
That is indeed correct. Yes.
Awesome, awesome. And you are a content creator. And let's see, you're also creative director of Navitas Parfums.
Yes, it's been a great honor to do that, of course.
That's awesome as well. So you're very accomplished in the fragrance community. And also you just launched a brand new company called Redbrook, right?
Yeah, it is brand new as far as its release is concerned, but it's
Yeah,
obviously a project that we've worked on for a long
right.
time. So, for us, it doesn't feel brand new, but the fact
Yeah.
that it is out now, it's a blessing to have the opportunity to hear from people who have experienced the fragrance. It's awesome.
You've got so much going on right now. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to be with me, especially on Easter weekend. So, all right. Well, Steven, if you would, go ahead and tell everybody in the audience or at home who's watching this a little bit about yourself, where you're from, anything you're willing to share, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a teacher by day. Let's start with that. A lot of people think that I do this YouTube thing full time. I really don't. I teach from 8 to 3 or whatever. Sometimes
Yeah.
I also tutor afterwards.
Wow.
But of course, in the evening and on the weekends, I love all things having to do with fragrance. I'm actually in the middle of testing a line right now. And so it's like every turn I take, I'm always looking at fragrance or thinking about fragrance. And back in 2012, I decided that I wanted to connect with people in a more meaningful way, because people around me, my brother, and my immediate family members, nobody is really into fragrances the way that I am. I do credit this passion and this addiction somewhat to my mother, who also has her own collection. But I said, you know what, I need to create a YouTube channel, because I'm sure that there are people out there who are just as fond of this hobby as I am. And immediately I was able to meet people, and it's been such a blessing. And this is a wonderful community. So many like-minded, passionate individuals, yourself included. And so I do everything from my home here in northern New Jersey. I haven't always lived here. I was born in Queens, in Flushing, Queens. After living here for a few years, I actually moved to Greece. So I was living in Athens, Greece, in the capital for a few years. And then I moved back to the United States in time for third grade. And I've been living here ever since 1993 or 94, something like that.
Wow. I did not know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I've been kind of all over the place, it seems.
Yeah, that's good though. It's good for your growth,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've had the opportunity to be in Europe one time, and it blew my mind. So that's awesome. So what was that? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but was there any one thing that got you to become a fragrance enthusiast, or was there just one moment, or was it just kind of over time, or what was it that got you involved in fragrances?
I think it was, to be honest with you, a combination of different things. So, I would credit my mother for helping me get into fragrances. And the earliest memory that I have with her in fragrance is, she would always want to order perfumes online. And she was not very technologically literate or savvy. So she'd be like, hey, Steven, can you please help me order this? And it would always be like some obscure designer fragrance that I've never heard of. And as a way of thanking me for helping her, she would have me order a perfume for myself. And I would always tell her the same thing. I'm like, Ma, listen, there's no such thing as smell-o-vision. I don't know what they smell like. I would rather you not waste the 50 or 60 bucks or whatever to buy this from me, because I have no idea what it smells like. And I would remember her saying, oh, but you try this one because I have a cousin who wore this one, or I have an uncle who wore this one, and this one smells very good. So by the time that I was in high school, I had like 30 bottles in my collection, and all of my friends were wearing Axe and Tag and Bod and, and so here I am, this high schooler, 14, 15 years old, with like 30 eau de toilettes in his collection. And so, I have a family who wore a lot of fragrance, my grandfather as well, although he wore predominantly aftershaves. I think a lot of us have a similar story, right? Like we credit like a parent or a grandparent for getting us into the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I know. When I was, I never had any fragrances. I'll be real brief, but I never had any fragrances when I was with my mother, and then she passed away. But then when I was adopted, of course, my dad had, Old Spice and Brood under the, but he only wore those when he was going somewhere. It wasn't an everyday thing. So it wasn't until later in college for me, not later in college, but my first year in college, one of my friends was rocking polo green, or, you know, that's what everybody calls it. And that's when I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. You know, that's when I got, so.
Right. The classic. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what got me into fragrances. But, okay. So yeah, your mom, you credit your mom kind of for, was your dad on board with it at all? Or what, how did he feel towards fragrances?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've asked my mom about it because he lives in Greece, so I don't talk to him as often as I do
Okay.
with, my mother. So I've asked my mother, I'm like, so did my dad ever wear anything? And he had a few aftershaves, but apparently his signature scent was Wild Country by Avon. So
Wow.
I have a bottle of it. It's like a real barbershop lavender fougere kind of a fragrance, a little powdery at the same time, kind of smelling like a baby powder lavender scent. And my mom has this funny story where she's like, he would like drown himself in it when she was pregnant with me. And so she goes, that made her, because she had an acute sense of smell when she was pregnant. And so that made her like hate the fragrance. And so she can't even smell it anymore. It's a pretty funny story. So no, he wasn't as into fragrances as I am. I think it's really my mother who was like the addicted one, if you will.
Okay. My wife and I like to do bargain hunting, so a lot of times we'll go to the Goodwills and I see so many of those Avon bottles up on the shelves. They're empty, of course, but I forgot about Avon selling until you brought it up. That's funny. Okay, so you had, as you were growing up, you started gathering a certain amount of fragrances and you really got into it. What was that one pivotal moment where, like, you decided to get on Instagram, or you decided to be a YouTuber, and you knew you kind of wanted to, to take it even further than just, having it at home? You wanted it to be a hobby. When did that occur?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I always knew that there was a diversity among designer fragrances. Yeah. And I think that moment was when I smelled Angel Men by Thierry Mugler. So when I was smelling Dior's and Chanel's, and of course Dior has very experimental fragrances like Fahrenheit from the late 80s, and Hypnotic Poison with that beautiful almond in there. But I think that pivotal moment when I decided to get on social media, like you said, is in 2011, like late 2011, early 2012. I was watching a video on YouTube, coincidentally, by another fragrance reviewer. His channel is called Hiro Yoruzuka. It's no longer a channel that you can find on YouTube, just because he made all of his videos private. There was a conflict with his job, and so he couldn't be on social media. But he had a video called My Perfected Starting Lineup. And he was talking about, and this was, like I said, 2011, 2012. He was talking about fragrances like Original Santal by Creed, Cher Guy by Serge Lutens, L'air du Desert Marocain by Tower Perfumes, Reflection Man by Amouage. And I had never heard of these brands before. So I'm watching this video with like Bleu de Chanel in my collection or whatever. I'm just making it up. No, but I had nothing but designers. Yeah. And I'm watching this video and I'm like, what are these fragrances? And I was like, is this person purposely picking obscure fragrances out of the fear that his taste is going to be criticized? Yeah. And then when I did the research, I realized that there was this entire other world of niche fragrances out there. And I said, oh, I got to sample this and I got to sample that. So I ended up purchasing tons of samples, and I really just fell down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Speaking. But I would say 2011, 2012, when I realized for the first time that there are people out there who are just as obsessed as I am, that's kind of when I started on the social media thing.
Awesome, man. And so you've been doing it around 8 or 9 years then? Yeah.
Okay. Right around that time. I think I created my channel on June 5th of 2012, if my memory serves me right.
So what was that thing then? What was the one thing? Because you don't just, pick up a camera and start filming. Like, what was that thing that made you to do that? Because it takes a little bit of guts. It's a little bit uncomfortable. You don't know what people will think. Will anybody come along for the ride? What inspired you?
It was tough. I'm going to be honest with you, because I am very much so an introvert. And that feeling of recording myself and putting it out there for the world to see, I mean, I can't even watch my own videos. They're kind of cringy for me.
I know,
but
I'm the same way.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Yes. I think it was just seeing all of the personalities on YouTube Dan Mish, my Mickers, rest in peace to him. Also the Fragrance Bros and Mark from the channel Robes 08. And there were a lot of people who were really active at the time. And I felt like everybody had something to offer and everybody had their own unique and addictive personality. And I enjoyed watching different channels for different reasons. And even though I didn't really see it in myself, like, well, what do I have to offer? Like, what is different about my personality? But I said, you know what, that's not up to me to decide. That's up to others to decide. So I said, you know what, I just have to suck it up and I have to muster up the courage. And I was working off of like the cheapest equipment at the time. I think I had like a Sony CyberShot, which was like 5 gigabytes of, I don't even know. I'm not even going to get into the specifics because I'm not too tech savvy myself. But I had like really no lighting, no audio, nothing at all. But I said, I'm going to record this video and we'll see how it goes. And sure enough, people were leaving comments like, can you review this? Can you review that? And I found myself in that position where I was like, oh, I actually have this fragrance. Yes, I can review that. And so it felt like, the trickle effect, it was like an avalanche. One thing led to another, and here I am.
Wow, man, that's awesome. And this wasn't a planned question, but like, when did you know that you kind of caught that lightning in a bottle, so to speak? How long into it?
Oh, man. I'll be honest with you. I think it was, I don't know. A part of me kind of feels like I still haven't caught that lightning in a bottle.
That's a good attitude to have.
It's been a few years, and it's just as fun for me to do what I do now as it was 9 years ago when I first started. And so I think for me, it's all about, is somebody watching this video and feeling like, oh, I learned something today, or, oh, this person helped me understand what this fragrance smells like when, this other review that was written, or the description of the fragrance, the narrative of the fragrance did not. And so, even if I can just reach out to one person, I mean, I've had different chapters, if you will, where like, I remember my first epiphany there was like this one Facebook group where it was only for reviewers. And it was kind of like the Reviewers Club. It's no longer active, by the way. Okay. And they invited me to be a member of that group. And I was like, oh my God, look, I made it, right? They invited me to be a member of the Reviewers group. So that was like the first moment where I felt like, oh, I'm accepted here. And then I would say like a bunch of different things have happened throughout the journey. So it's kind of broken up into chapters, but I feel like it keeps growing, right? And the book is far from being over.
Yeah, so it's like if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not work,
No, that's the Confucian analect, right? If you get a job doing something you love, you will never work a day in your life. And so, every time I hit the record button, it's like, I love doing this. I feel like I'm talking to a friend. I feel like I'm just, I just discovered this fragrance. I'm very excited to share it with somebody else, and we'll see where that road takes us,
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if it's the same, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost feel like it's playing an instrument and learning to play it and loving it, not being made by your parents. You just do it because you love it. You're just going to play the guitar forever, whether you're in a rock band or not. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Or it's like learning how to play a new cover song. And it's like, oh, look at what I just learned. And then you're like kind of looking for approval from somebody else. But at the same time, you have all the right chords, you have the strumming pattern down, you're hitting the right pitch, but you're still, hoping that somebody listens to it and says, oh yeah, that was really good, man. Like, I really like the way you played it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love to draw and I don't get paid for it. And people always ask me, you should do it for a career. And I just shrug it off, but I'll do drawing whether I get paid for it or not, because it relaxes me and it's fun. So, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I got to see some of your artwork sometime. Please.
Yeah, I'll send some to you sometime. I just never think to do it. What's your favorite part about being a content creator? What do you really love about it?
Oh man.
Now you don't have to pick one, if there's multiple things.
So I think what I would say now is having a reason to justify all of the purchases that I make.
I didn't expect you to say that.
No, that's cool. It's true to a certain degree, because like if you asked my wife 4 years ago, let's say, right? Like, what do you think about your husband and his collection and his spending habits? She'd probably be like, oh, he's crazy. You know, I wish he would stop.
Yeah.
And, you know, he
Yeah.
doesn't need any more fragrances. But I think now, seeing like how invested I am into it, you know, with the creative direction for various projects. And, you know, obviously the Google AdSense helps somewhat, not enough for me to quit my day job, but it helps a little bit. So I think now she's like, okay, well, he's a little bit more invested in the process now, and his channel has grown significantly over the past 5 years. And so now it's like before we started this Zoom chat, I just purchased infrared, Spice Bomb Infrared by Victor and Rolf. And so I saw it was available on Nordstrom. So I purchased it and then I logged into the Zoom. So something like that, like I always justify the purchase like, well, babe, I have to review it, right? That's why I bought it. I have to review it brand new. Whereas before I felt a little bit of guilt. Now I don't.
Yeah, I think that's true with like anybody's dream, you know, like it always seems so far-fetched and crazy to anybody, you know, like when your friends say, hey, come out and do this, and you're like, you say no, and you're disciplined because you want to accomplish this thing. It always looks crazy to people, you know, in the beginning. And because I go through that too. I'm so glad you touched on it, honestly, because it was a question I have. It's, you know, there's this level of guilt. Now, for me, I don't have it as bad as other people. And by the way, this interview is not about me, but I'm just, you know, we're having a back and forth. So, but I don't have it as much as other people because, you know, I donate plasma and I use that prepaid plasma card that they give me to buy my fragrances. So I feel like I'm doing a good deed and being able to buy fragrances. But I know other people, they talk to me in my DMs and they feel a level of guilt about it. And, you know, also there's a little bit of that embarrassment factor as well, you know, with it, because if someone were to come over your house and see 200 colognes on your dresser, they might be like, man, you could have put that towards a bill, or you could have put that towards, I don't know, whatever. I'm just making up something. So, you know, I think some people struggle with that.
No, you're right, Scott. And I actually still go through that. You know, I
Do
had
you?
a cousin who visited me, admittedly, a few years ago. And he walked into my bedroom and he saw all of the bottles that I had at the time. And he says, why do you have so many? Almost in like a, not a demeaning way, but almost in like, I don't know what the right adjective is, but he said, why do you have so many? Don't they all smell the same? And I was like, no, man, they actually don't. And so here I am, like in this desperate attempt to like show him the differences and the nuances among them all to try to justify the reason why I have so many. But like you said, there is that sort of element of guilt where there are days when I'll be on the computer, like uploading the video, editing the thumbnail, optimizing the metadata, whatever. And then like my daughter is pulling on my sleeve and she's like, Daddy, play with me, play with me.
Yeah.
So it's like,
oh, yeah. Good
you know,
point.
it makes me feel so bad. Like, you know, I'm doing this for her and I'm
I
doing
go
this
through
for
that
my
too.
family. And so I think a lot of it is just finding the right balance, you know?
Yes.
And if I can wake up like really early, like 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I'll record like 3 or 4 videos, at least I know that, you know, I do have the next few days to play with her. And, you know, I don't feel like I am allotting time towards doing the fragrance thing when I should be spending it with family, you know?
That's a good point. Sometimes I go through this, this thing where like my son is so into this now. He knows who you are and Jeremy, and he's like always wanting to sniff my fragrances and do all this stuff. And I sit back and I'm looking at him, and part of me is like admiring him, going, "Oh, this is cool. He's getting into it." But then there's this other part of me that's like, I should be teaching him how to hunt and fish and be passionate about this, that. Should he really be this excited about fragrances? Like I should be teaching him something else. And sometimes, I know that sounds kind of weird, but sometimes that's kind of the thought that crosses my head, like, because he is all in now because I'm all in. And, you know, it is, you know, I'm only have 300 subscribers or whatever, but I've had some really cool opportunities, even as a small content creator, and he's getting a kick out of it. So sometimes I do feel guilty that I'm not doing something more significant with him, because this has kind of consumed me as well. And it is about finding that balance. Absolutely.
I think ultimately, though, they're going to see the value in what we do. You know,
Yes.
They might not see it right now just because we're still, I guess, kind of in the preliminary phases. So there are times when I'll like take my test strip and I'll have my daughter, she's only 3 years old, she's about to be 4, but I'm like, oh, smell this one. What do you smell? What do you smell? So she does like it, but I know what you mean. Like she would much rather play with like her Barbies or, you know, have her nails painted or something like that versus smelling fragrances. So, but I think it's a matter of time. They're definitely gonna see the value in what we do, and they're gonna.
Where I see it is, Stephen, is through the relationships. Man, it's already paid off that way. Like, I can cheer up somebody if somebody's struggling with something. I can be there for them, and just having the back and forth like I'm having with you. It doesn't matter if you have 200 subs or 150,000 subs. It's the back and forth is what means the world to me. And so that in and of itself makes this all rewarding. Truthfully, for me, I can't speak for everybody else. So
I feel the same way. I do.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. What's your least favorite thing about being a content creator?
Oh my gosh. Of course, one could say any number of things: spending the money, time away from family, maybe at times feeling a certain sense of obligation. I can tell you right now, there was obviously pre-COVID, there were times when there would be a perfume event in the city. So I felt that impulse to attend the event. Like, it's a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out. And so I found out that there was a perfume event at this boutique in Soho between 5 and 7 p.m. So here I am getting out of work at 3 p.m., catching an Uber to the transportation center, catching a series of trains to go into New York because I live in New Jersey. And even though the event is scheduled to run from 5 to 7, it runs from 5 to 8. So here I am catching a series of trains back home, and I still need to prepare a lesson for tomorrow because I'm a teacher. So I feel like it consumes so much of my time. And even though I'm reviewing and I'm analyzing and I'm attending the events and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, sometimes I think you would agree with me, my favorite thing when it comes to fragrances is just wearing them.
Yeah.
Just wearing them. It's just enjoying them, right? Yeah. It's using them as the olfactory accessory. So sometimes there's all of this extra stuff that needs to happen, but ultimately it's like the most enjoyable thing is just wearing them and appreciating them, It's kind of like when I was an English major, if you will allow me to branch off on this tangent. When I was an English major, the professor assigns a text, and then you need to take the text home. You need to annotate. You need to write the 2-page essay in MLA format. And then you need to have a sophisticated class discussion on the text. But what's better than just buying a book because you like the author or his or her other previous works and just reading it while you're on vacation for recreational purposes? Like that's the most fun thing, So that's why I'm actually looking forward to this trip that I'm getting ready to take tomorrow. Because it's like, hey, I'm going to take, I put it over to the side, Egge by Nishane. And it's like, it's a fragrance I've never worn before. I'm going to really mark the occasion, so to speak. And hopefully when I smell it a few months into the future, it's going to remind me of, being in North Carolina with my wife and my family. That's smart. And daughter. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think we all mutually love about fragrances, right? That's really memory.
That's really smart.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, so while you were talking, this question popped into my head. It's not another planned question. So we're talking about least favorite things in this community, because it's a community and it's smaller than other communities, but not as small as some people may think. When you reach a certain level or have a certain amount of people following you or subscribe to you, you can get on a pedestal, so to speak. Not self-imposed, it's just people put you there. And so you might have a lot of notoriety in that community and kind of be famous. And I'm guessing this, maybe I'm way off. And, you don't have all the money to go with that fame in the community. And I imagine that your inbox and your DMs and all that gets full and people have expectations of you and are pulling you in different directions. And that must get hard as well, being at the level that you are, or Jeremy, or I'm just naming 2 people, Max Forte, whatever. That must be difficult as well. Or does it not affect you?
I think there's a little PTSD involved. You hear the ding sound on your phone and you're like, oh, I got to answer that,
Yeah.
And I think it affects me a little differently just because of my personality, where I love the feeling, although I haven't felt it in a long time, I love the feeling of being all caught up. And so when there's an offending message and it's sitting there on my phone, it's like, no, I have to respond to this person. Like I'll be sitting down for lunch and I'll get a notification And, like the average normal person will say, I'll wait until a half hour later when I'm done with my meal, and then I'll respond to them. But for me, it's like, no, I got to respond to them now, and then I can enjoy my meal. And so, yeah, the inbox is always sort of ringing off the hook. And of course, a part of me feels like, the reason why I started this channel is to help people. And they're messaging me because they need help, whether they want a recommendation or they have a fragrance. Like I had a gentleman the other day tell me that he's going on his honeymoon and he wanted a recommendation. He gave me his budget, and he told me what other fragrances he's really into. And so I was very happy to make a recommendation for him. But it's like, you have to think, like, if that happens to you 20 times a day, at what point, and I'm just, this is a number I'm just pulling out of a hat, but, I'm sure Jeremy gets a lot more inquiries than I do. But if it happens to you a certain number of times per day, like how many of those questions can you realistically answer? And at what point do you say, ooh, it seems like my serenity and my peace of mind is a little compromised here. So I can't answer everyone. And I do have to spend a little bit of time with my family, be a husband, be a father. And so sometimes I feel guilty, but I think there's a moment where a light bulb goes off and it's like, be a father, be a husband, that ought to be your priority. And then when you do have a little bit of free time, like, help the community out. And I try to do, we all wear a lot of hats in this game. And so I try to do a little bit of everything, make sure that everybody is happy. But I also think that that's why Q&A videos are so popular, right? Because you can sort of take all of the general questions, address it in one video. It's archived, it's permanent, so people can enjoy it for years to come. And rarely the answers to the questions change. And so there you go.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your candor. Okay, in this community, it seems like I've heard different words being batted around, that saturation, a lot of people are doing it, blah, blah, blah. Do you think it's still worth right now for somebody who maybe they're just coming to my channel today or just coming to your channel and like, yeah, I want to get involved in this. Do you think it's worth them becoming a content creator, fragrance content creator today?
Yeah, I do think so. I do think so. I could have said the same thing about myself when I started 9 years ago.
Yeah,
I could have said, oh, there's Dan, there's Cubby, there's Tim, there's J.R. Ryder, there's Hero, there's Daver, there's this person, there's that person. And I could have said, well, why do they need me? And so I think they'll say the same thing today. Well, there's Steven, there's Ashton, there's Scott, there's Jeremy, there's Ross, there's Max, there's Kristen, so on and so forth. But guess what? Everybody has a different opinion, because I'm talking about fragrances. Fragrances are so subjective. And so it's amazing because, like, if I'm smelling this fragrance and I say, you know what, man, I really love this. I really love this. The next person says, you know what, I love this. The third person says, you know what, I love this. And one person says, no, there's something fruity in here that I don't enjoy. Then you might get that one person who's watching and they're like, oh my God, I agree with you. You're the only reviewer who said that. There's this fruity, musky thing in there that I don't really get along with either. And so you might be that person who is going to click and resonate with somebody else's sentiments the way that the majority of reviewers will not. And so just because of that element of subjectivity, I think it's always worth it. And I thought about this too, when it comes to reviewing one of the most popular fragrances, whether it be like Amen Pure Malt or Creed Aventus, I'll think to myself, does the Fragcom really need another Aventus review? Do they really need another Pure Malt review? But you might say something about it that other people have not, and you might have a way of explaining it that maybe fills a gap that was left behind by another review, and vice versa, because I really do see the value in everybody's reviews. And I think that everybody has something to offer. So, and at the end of the day, it's about connecting with people. And so if you don't create the channel, you're not going to connect with people. You can do it on a more anonymous level. Maybe you're commenting on Fragrantica or Base Notes or, in one of the Facebook groups. But when you put yourself out there, admittedly so, it requires a certain level of bravery. But when you do so, I think you'll see that the outcome is more rewarding than not.
Yeah, And also the advice that you've given me before in the past, and some other content creators have given me is your enthusiasm. If you're enthused about it and you're having fun, then what's the rest matter? Just do it because you're enthused and passionate. You always tell me, it's about the passion. And if you are passionate, then just do it. And if it's a break away from this crazy world we're living in right now, why not do it? You're having fun and you're not thinking about the real world for, 20 minutes. Why not?
It is a form of escapism.
Yeah, whether it grows or not, and you're having fun, do it.
We all face a myriad of problems in our life, whether it be, debt, financial issues, people passing away, health concerns. There's just so much going on, politics. And,
yes.
When we can just smell fragrances and say, you know what, that takes my mind off of the other things that I'm worrying about in perpetuum, then I'll have fragrances all day. And we created this analogy before where it's like people might talk to us and say, oh, but look at all the money you're spending. I'm not gambling. I'm not going to the bar. I'm not racing cars. Other people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a season pass to see their favorite baseball team, which is cool. If that's what you like,
exactly.
More power to you. But for me, this is what I like. And so I'm not doing drugs or anything like that. This is my addiction,
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, we're using YouTube to justify that addiction, aren't we?
That's right. That's awesome. I think back, this is Easter weekend, and I know not everybody has the same, viewpoints I do on it, but so many years ago when at the birth of Christ, they were bringing in myrrh and frankincense. So
that's been popular, right?
Been popular for a long time.
Even 2,000 years later or whatever, it's still here. That's right.
Still, scents are still here. So, okay. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received, or that maybe you haven't received it, you've just learned it, that you could give to somebody just starting out on YouTube for the negativity, with the commenters? And, before you answer that, you touched on this just a minute ago, but I'm always still surprised, I guess, because I'm so new, that grown, and I don't want to be negative about this, but that it seems like grown men would know that this is subjective. And so I'm always still surprised by that. So what's the best piece of advice you could give to people who are starting out on YouTube, who, we're all made different. So some of us are more sensitive than others, how to handle that?
Oh, sure. Listen, there was a time when somebody left and this happened many years ago. I want to say like 6 or 7 years ago. I reviewed a fragrance and I got a comment on that video. And it took me like a week to reply to the comment because I was so busy. And, granted, there are big YouTubers, if you think of like PewDiePie or something like that, he never replies to comments because he got to that level where it's impossible. But it took me a week to reply to that person's comment. And I replied with a question just because I wanted to have a little bit more clarity on his question so that I can better answer his query. And then he replied to me and he said, oh, you took an entire week to reply to me and that's all you can say? And so it's like, here I am trying to help the person, but they're like, how dare you, right? How dare you not answer my question? And to be honest with you, you could have found the answer to his question by doing like a 5-second Google search, but I'm not going to go there. So your question to me was, what is the best piece of advice that I have received in terms of like managing negativity and also finding a drive to keep going on YouTube? Believe it or not, the best piece of advice that I received was actually from a friend of mine who gave me this advice pertaining to a different art form, which is music, not fragrance actually, but music. And I'm going to tell you what happened to me. I used to play in a surf instrumental rock band. Very much like if you ever watch SpongeBob SquarePants and you hear like the surf music in the background, that's the kind of music that I would play. And I really enjoyed playing it. But I grew up in a town where all of my friends were playing heavy metal and like hardcore, post-hardcore rock music. And I was never really into that. And one time I was chatting with one of my friends, his name is Marquise Anthony, and he said, why don't you get up on that stage? We were at a concert in Hoboken and he goes, why don't you get up on that stage? And I said, Marquise, listen to the music that everybody else is playing. They're covering bands like Darkest Hour and all of these really heavy bands. And I said, they're not going to want to hear surf instrumental rock music. You know, I would be embarrassed to play that. He goes, why? Do you like it? I said, yeah, I love it. He's like, do you enjoy playing that music? I said, yeah, it's one of my passions as a matter. And I used to play in a band with 3 of my friends. And he goes, okay, well, if you enjoy it, if you're passionate about it, why should you let somebody else's opinion stop you from doing the thing that you're passionate about? And so for me, when it comes to, you know, getting in front of the camera, finding the drive and the motivation to make these videos, it's like, well, I'm passionate about this, you know? And that's why a lot of times I don't discriminate. There could be like a $20 cheapie, a Nautica Voyage or something. Sometimes it could be an $800 Roja fragrance. It's like, if I like the smell, and if I'm excited to talk about it on camera, then I will. And I don't think about, sometimes I think about, well, this one is going to get more views and this one isn't going to get as many views. But it is about curating a diversity of different fragrances that you speak about. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, you know, I don't really discriminate when it comes to fragrances. Is this designer? Is this niche? Is this expensive? Yeah. Is this inexpensive? Is this an original? Is this a clone? So on and so forth. I try to cover a little bit of everything because in my opinion, I'm increasing the catalog and the encyclopedia of reviews here on YouTube. And I'm just adding to, you know, something that everybody is sort of contributing to. It's like a pot, right? Yeah. And all of the reviewers are throwing into that pot. And we're really we're helping the uninformed consumer, you know, because that person is out there who is in a Neiman Marcus, in a Saks, and they pull up their phone and they Google a fragrance, and Google is connected to YouTube, and they're going to give them videos. And that could be the breaking point. That could be the catalyst or the crux, if you will, as to whether or not somebody is going to make that purchase or not. But, you know, when it comes to the negativity, I always like to say that, you know, there's always going to be a difference of opinion, and you are never going to please everyone. You know, it's interesting. When I wear a t-shirt, people say I don't look professional enough. When I wear a suit, they tell me I'm trying to sell them something, or I look like I'm trying to sell them something. When I do a top 10 seasonal video too early, they say, oh, it's too early. This isn't an accurate list. When I do it too late, they say, oh, couldn't you have been a little bit earlier with this video? So it's like, no matter what you do, somebody is going to find a flaw in it. And there are flaws in what we do, but it's about looking at the bigger picture and the totality of something and saying, is this providing value despite the 1 or 2 flaws in it? But are there 98 or 99 good things that this video is conveying? And so I think we should always try to focus on the positive. The negative is going to exist in every aspect of our life, in our workforce, among our friends. If we're playing on a sports team, there's always going to be negative. So it's all about focusing on the positive.
Yeah, usually you're getting that kind of negativity when you're actually doing something. When you're just sitting back and chilling, you don't get it. You're safe all day long. So.
I hear you, but you're not going to get anywhere sitting on the couch.
Okay, thank you. You were just talking about adding value. That answer alone was worth it. That added a value to a lot of people. I'm sure it just did to me.
I hope that helped. I really
did. It did. What's one thing that you would like to clear up that you don't think people understand about being a YouTuber, a misconception? Is there anything like that you've ever thought about?
It's a lot of work. It's a very expensive hobby, and it's a lot of work. Yeah. You know, even when you pick one fragrance and you say, oh, I'm going to review this fragrance today, that one review can take 4 or 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize it. Realistically speaking, it takes a week plus, because you have to start off by testing the fragrance.
Yes.
And then you have to prepare. I don't have a script, but I prepare what I'm going to say in my mind. So there's like an hour where I'm like talking to myself like a maniac, preparing what I'm going to say. You get in front of the camera. It might require 2 or 3 takes, depending on how fluent one is. And then you have to upload it, which is a process. Then it needs to be edited. Then you need to upload it to the YouTube channel. Then you need to optimize the metadata, the tags, the description, all of that stuff. And then you have to cross-promote it on social media platforms. Sometimes I know there are people who transcribe the audio, you know, so that it has the closed captioning on it. If, YouTube doesn't provide it. So it's a really long, sometimes painstaking, laborious process. And so a lot of people think it's a matter of, turning on the camera and then you talk for 10 minutes, you press stop, and then it's done. But it is a process. There's a lot of time involved, and it is work, and a lot of people, I guess, don't realize that until they do it for themselves. And they're like, oh my God, like this actually took the wind out of me. Like this is a tiresome process. It is. But again, it's a labor of love, right? And that's the reason why we keep doing it and we keep pressing forward, because we're always looking for, that reaction where we publish the video and we see the comments coming in and we're like, oh, it's worth it. It's so worth it.
I always feel, because of what you just said, I always feel this amazing sense of accomplishment when it actually gets to, and like, it just feels like I just did something, like, like, even if I only get like 20 views, I'm like, man, I did that. That's awesome. That's how, because of what you just said, like they don't even realize that you have to make the thumbnail. It's not just a matter of taking a picture. You have to make a thumbnail that catches somebody's eye, and just all that stuff. It's crazy. The links that you have to give people, like if you post it to Facebook and post it, it's a lot of work. It really is. I think a lot of people don't realize. And I was saying to on one of the interviews, I was like, I would feel like a lot more people, like, because sometimes you might have, let's say me, I'll have 300 subscribers and I may only get 70 likes out of those 300. I was like, I feel like a whole lot more people would actually hit the like button if they knew what I went through. Who cares if the video's good? If they knew what I went through, they would just hit the like button.
I hear you. No, I know. And a lot of times it's funny because the videos that we spend so much time on, they'll only get a few views. And a lot of like the more whimsical, haphazard videos are the ones that blow up. And we're like,
I know.
Really? Like, of all the time that I spent on this video, but you got to take the good with the bad, right? And,
that's so true, because I've been Honey, man, that was a lemon. I stunk that one up. It took me 8 takes. And then the next day it blew up. And then the one I was so polished with, only 50 people watched it. So you can't figure this thing out, man. It's funny.
I know, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. What's your stance on content creators making money? There's so many opinions about that, especially on Instagram.
Well, it's amazing because no matter what industry you're in, you're going to make money. You do it to make money. Mm-hmm. And so I understand there is a passion behind it. And believe me, I have spent so much money on fragrances, but there comes a time when you have to realize that, I can't spend thousands of dollars every single month on scented water, although it is what I'm passionate about and it's what I love. And it's something that I really believe in. And it's something that I see myself doing long term. There comes a point where you realize, I have a car payment, I have a phone bill, I have a rent or a mortgage payment, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I have a lot of other obligations. And, you can't have $20 in your bank account and you have 2 or 3 mouths to feed at home. That doesn't resonate with me, And so the Google AdSense, it helps a lot. There are times when, like you said, I will spend 5 hours making a video and in 24 hours, I make $4 on it. That's less than $1 an hour. So it's like, do I feel guilty for making a few cents per hour? No, I don't. I feel like I should be making a lot more than that. So I think it kind of goes back to what we said before, the Confucian intellect. If you get a job doing something you love, you will never work a day in your life. And, even if you're driving on the highway, you're going to see a billboard, right? There's an advertisement there. Yeah. Even if you, go to an NBA game, they're going to be wearing the Nike shorts, right? Yeah. They're getting money for representing Nike. So it's like, if you are getting money doing things in a very honest and in a very transparent way, and in an organic way, there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah. There's so many people, when I'm on Instagram and I see the different posts and stuff, I think people just get so bent out of shape about, there's people that I don't know where they get their information. They just somehow know because they always say it, but they know that there's people doing this just so they can get free bottles of something. And then if they get those free bottles of something, they're going to give a positive review because that bottle was free, and they're not going to be fair about it. And it just seems like people get so up in arms over that. And I don't know. It's just, I don't try to worry about the missteps or the mishappenings that other people do or how nefarious they are, because I have enough to worry about with myself I'm just always trying to look into the positive of things. And I'm just so surprised. Still to this day, I've been doing this for a year on Instagram and 7 months on YouTube. I'm still so surprised at the negative aspects of a hobby everybody concentrates on as opposed to the positive aspects. But I'll learn one day.
No, I know what you mean. And you know what? You cannot deposit. Yeah, sure. You cannot deposit eau de toilettes at the bank, right? And so, you know, even if somebody does receive a free bottle, then more power to them. You know, I've had companies contact me in the past, of course, but there's a process involved. You know, it's not just, oh, this is what you're willing to send me, then I'll accept. A lot of times, like with this brand, they sent me 4 samples. After I smell all 4 of these samples, I will pick my favorite, right?
Yeah.
I might not like all of them, but I'm going to pick my favorite. And when I do, I'm still going to retain a certain level of objectivity in that review. And I feel like, you know, although it is a subjective thing, the biggest thing that we do is to describe it in what we try to make it an objective way, right? So we'll talk about the perfumer, we'll talk about the year of release, we'll talk about how many fragrances the brand has in their catalog, we'll talk about the notes that are in it, and then there's a little bit of subjectivity in there where we describe what we perceive to be the stronger notes, the weaker notes, so on and so forth. And so really, I never reach out to companies. You know, every single correspondence that has happened has always been the company reaching out to me. And I take that as a blessing. I really do, because there was a time in 2015, I want to say, shortly before I got married, where I had $17 in my bank account. And it was because I was going to New York every single weekend, and I would purchase 2 or 3 bottles from in New York. And then I would go right around the corner to this other store called LAFCO. And then I would go to Le Labo on Elizabeth Street. I would walk down a few stores, visit Atelier Cologne. And then I would walk home with like 4 bags. And I just spent like $600 in one weekend, when at the time I was making a very small amount for my job. I won't go into the figures. And so, you know, now when you have a job, a company who is willing to give you a bottle that you would have purchased anyway, and you were excited to review on your channel anyway, but it's saving you $100 or $200, you know, that's a blessing in my opinion.
For sure. I feel the same way. Thank you so much for being willing to cover that.